G'day, mate. Legend? What's been going on? Nah, not much. Although, I did go on a forum. You did what? Yeah, that actually happened. Yep, that did happen. I went onto a forum. I've never been a massive fan. I find them quite trying. I think that, there's a lot of people that put a lot of effort into those forums, and they're usually guys that are extremely passionate about that particular bike or that particular model of bike, and they put a lot of effort into maintaining, and it costs money to keep these forums going too. And I know that Christian Wraith is the guy that looks after the XS1100 Australia forum, and the man is passionate about the model, and he does everything in his power to try and keep that community together. And I suspect that this is a similar thing going on with the GS Resources, which is the forum that I went on to. The thing I like about forums is that if you want to find something specific, you can drill down and try and find where that question may have been asked before, or whether someone's addressed it. The thing I don't like about them is that they're quite onerous, and you've got to read through a lot of crap to get to what you want. But unlike Facebook pages, etc., it is actually categorized and logged, whereas on a Facebook page, stuff just disappears, and because of the popularity of social media, it disappears very quickly, so you may not even see something that somebody's posted. But down to the nut cutting, why did I go on there? These forks. Remember, I couldn't find the oil capacity. I was determined to find the correct oil capacity for those forks. So I went on, found the right section on the forum to deal with suspension, posted a question about the Oceana market forks and the four-way adjustables, got a number of responses. One of them was a gentleman called Ben, and thank you, Ben, if you're watching this. I really appreciate you reaching out. Ben had a factory supplementary manual that covered more than one market and actually covered these forks. The supplementary manual that I've seen for the G doesn't cover these forks, so it's obviously for a different market. Now, while it does cover those forks in that supplementary manual, it refers to them as other markets. So it gives both. It gives the air fork capacities, and it gives the four-way adjustable fork capacities. And they are quite different. And the magic number for these forks is 213 millimetres. So we were within a milliliter or so of what we actually put in there. Am I going to cry over a milliliter? No, I'm not. I'm not going to try and recover a milliliter of oil, for God's sake. It'll be fine. Righto, so now that we know that capacity is right, well, within a milliliter, we can crack on and get this happening. I have got a bit of a mess, so I'll clean that up. I'll get everything prepped up. My goal today is to try and get these forks reassembled on the bike, so let's see how we go. All right, good enough. We don't all have the luxury of a nice big garage that we can, and it's all tidy and plenty of storage. So I struggle a bit here. I've got to move shit around all the time. First job is we've got to replace the steering stem. So we've got the top race here, and obviously the bottom race here. Top race is fairly simple. We've got to remove that, obviously, and there's plenty of the race is small enough that you can get a drift up under it and knock it out. Voila. So that's that guy. But this bottom one presents a bit more of a problem. There's not enough lip there that you can put a drift down and get the bearing. It just doesn't it just doesn't work because it's recessed out. So the easiest method is to use an arc welder, because what happens is when you weld it and it cools, it shrinks, and it shrinks the race with it, and it also, the build-up of weld in the race gives you something that you can tap against. But in this case, it's just going to pop out. Let's use a screwdriver because it shrunk it down nicely. And you see, I didn't have to go all the way around the race. I only needed to do a wee bit of it. So there you go, that was a success. Haven't got much parts cleaner left, but you want to give it a clean before we fit the new race. Okay, it's now ready to accept the new bearings. Alright, so what I've got here is the two races that we need to fit into the headstock. There's a couple of ways you could go about this. One, you could just pop that up in there and then tap it in with a hammer or with a socket that's big enough to do the job. Same on the top, just pop him on there. The preferred method for me is to pull it together. So I've got a bit of threaded bar here, and I've got some of the pieces out of my bearing and seal fitting kit that I brought home from work. It's that whole constant pressure. Rather than impacting. Hitting it with a hammer is not going to do it any harm though, don't get me wrong. So everything's rocking and rolling. So we take our 17mm spanner and just try and bring it all up evenly. I've already started tapping these in with a soft hammer. I'm just going to use this to finish them off. Right, they're both home. So the top one doesn't go right down into the race. It sits a little bit proud into the housing. I mean, the bottom one is all the way home. So now we've got our new races in, and we're ready to pack the top bearing, because remember I had to bring some grease home, which I did. And so we'll pack that bearing and then assemble that steering head. to pack the bearing. If you remember, we packed the bottom bearing at work when we fitted it. I had it all wrapped up in Glad wrap, but just for shits and giggles, we'll put a little bit of extra grease in there. So we have our new top bearing. Sits down in there. Now just for, keep my fingers from having to hold that. These all balls kits always come with one of these top seals. Now on the XS1100 I couldn't get that to work. See if we can get it to work on this one. They obviously are meant to go over the top of that race there. And this GS had this other dust cover which is a bit damaged. The nut goes down into it, so that top seal seems to look like it is going to work. There's this. Right, so where were we? That's right, it looks like it's going to work. So the way the manual talks about assembling the steering head is tells you to use a special tool, which is essentially a 1/2-inch drive socket with 4 prongs on it to fit the nut. And you tension it up to a certain tension. I can't remember what it is. I'll write it on the screen, and then you back it off. So you're essentially seating the bearings, making sure everything's pulled down tight, and then you back it off to give it a little bit of, to give it movement. So what you want is you want to take up preload on the bearings, but you don't want to have them overly tight, which is what the problem was with the old bearings. They'd been over tightened. But I do not have said special tool. So I'm just going to use a C-spanner, and this one's a bit big. In the past, people have used punches, etc. I'll just pull that down so it's firm, and you can see it's quite, there is a bit of resistance on there. And then I'm just going to back it off a bit. Just so it's free to move, but there's no play. Right, that's that part done. So now we can put the forks in. I'm just because we don't have the top of it together yet, I'm just going to slide them up. You're going to be tight in there. So I'll just spread that open a bit. Making sure the screwdriver hasn't protruded through and isn't going to scratch the staunching tube. We're good. A little bit of lube on there just to encourage it a bit. Spray some on the fork as well. I'm just going to bring it up because I don't know where it's got to land yet, but I'll just bring it up somewhere around there. Pull the screwdriver out, and that should hold it in place. But just so that we don't lose it, I'll just nip up one of these bolts just to there. Right, Is that one? Okay, tubes are in, temporarily at least, sort of position. Now, if you're a couple of points worth mentioning here. One, of course, it goes without saying, when I welded on this, the battery earth has been disconnected. You never ever want to weld on a vehicle and leave the battery connected, because the welder could try and find a way back to ground through the battery and cause all sorts of grief. The other thing was these lower leg drain plugs. I only just pulled them down with a Phillips driver, and I was worried it was going to round the head off. Now I've got my JIS screwdriver, I can tighten them up properly. Okay, now let's see if we can remember how all this goes. Right, this all had to go on prior. They have to be tensioned up yet too. Okay, so that's that. Then our handlebars went on. Top of our triple clamps. It's just a bit tight on this side. Okay, so then we have our washer and nut that will pull this down tight against the nut. Just nip it up for now. I'm just going to bring it up so that the tube is flush with the top of the triple clamp. And this side, it's got to come down. What about there? Now we have bolts and nuts. Here as well. And one over here. Rightio, let's pop this front wheel in. This way we can start thinking about tightening and torquing up all the different bolts. All right. I'm just going to go around and nip up all these bolts. Without over tightening. And we'll get the torque wrench out. Right, we'll start at the bottom. They talk about I talk about two torque settings, 11 and 18 foot-pound. So we'll start at 11. They're probably already at that from the... Oh. Right, that's the 11. And we'll go up to 18. That's the bottom ones. Top ones are 14 to 21.5. So we'll go back down again to 14. I'm just going to mix this up a bit. See if I can get the bolt in from the other direction, because this is a bolt and this is a nut. If this is screwed into, if this was screwed into something, it becomes a screw. When you're dealing with bolts and nuts, you want to torque the nut because the bolt has to overcome a lot more friction. So you want to be torquing the nut. You want the bolt to stay still and the nut to be torqued up. Of course, if it's a screw, well then you want to torque the screw. I'm going to try and get him in the back here. If the instrument cluster will let me, and it has. So the only reason I did that was because a bit hard to get the torque wrench on the front. Right, so that's the 14 foot-pound. Do the other side. Then we go up to the 21.5. Whoa, actually that's wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I've just loosened them back off again because I've really done this in the wrong sequence if you think about it. We should be tensioning this nut to pull it all down, and if these need to move, then they can move with when we tighten this one up. So we'll tighten this one first, then we'll tighten this one, then we'll tighten these. So this one's 26 and then 37.5, so 26. And then 37.5. This one's 11 to 18. That's 11. That's 18. Now we can tighten up these ones. .5. Right. Well, that just dandy. So what just happened there, we snapped the stud off. That sort of pulls us up for now, but I will deal with that tomorrow. So I wasn't happy with the bolts that are in here. I'm just going to go and have a look in the manual and see whether it was bolts or whether it was meant to be studs. If it was meant to be studs, I'll go down the road and I'll buy 4 studs and I'll replace all of them. If it's meant to be bolts, well then I'll go and get bolts, but I'll just double check. But we've at least successfully been able to get, you know, the front of the bike assembled, which was my goal today, with the exception of the front axle. But we'll just leave it there for now. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and comment, and we'll be back with more fairly shortly on Andy's Motorcycle Obsessions. Bye for now.